Kao što smo već najavili, gost našeg intervjua tjedna je predsjednik uprave INE, a i mi smo njegovi gosti u njegovom uredu. So, Mr. Aldott, according to share prices on stock market, everybody was expecting a good business result, but the actual numbers were really astonishing.
I'm glad that if the shareholders are happy with the developments. Of course, it has to be put in perspective because in 2009, June, we took INA, basically the company was in relatively bad shape due to the financial crisis, due to heavy investments and lower cash flow. And
losses.
And losses. So we really had to start a turnaround story. The management focused basically on the things what management can do, like increasing the revenues, slashing the costs, restructuring the business, modernizing the business, taking in new management, changing the philosophy of operation. So it has its first results, and I believe in 2 years' time we were able to report positive net income, around 600 million kunas, even that included certain one-off effects, like we made provisions for a redundancy program of 1,500 people, which was 400 million kunas, and also for environmental clean-up works, which are required by EU rules in the value of 320 million kunas. So that's a quite encouraging sign, but even more interesting that the most frequently quoted parameter of profitability, the so-called EBITDA, in our case grew to nearly 4 billion kunas, which was an increase of 88%. This is what analysts cover most frequently.
So if you gain something in oil business, you lose on the other side. You pay a heavy price in natural gas business.
I mean, natural gas has been, if we recall the last 7, 8 or 10 years, it has been, first of all, a major source of cash taken out of the business for direct subsidies to large industry, households, and so on.
Is that the price of ownership?
It's coming also with that definitely the two shareholders agreed that the situation is not tenable, that unfair system has to be changed, and basically speaking, the natural gas business should operate at a market basis. Now, what was the specific agreement 2 years ago is that it was agreed that the gas business of INA will reach a break-even position. I will not generate profits, nor generate losses, and specific price measures will be undertaken to serve that goal. Now, there were some major steps. Some prices were raised towards the market, not reaching yet the market. However, some losses still remained, and I think now the two shareholders will need to address that in the next coming period, and hopefully it means that whoever will be the owner, according to the existing agreement, the government, or INA continues with this operation, that basically means that it has to operate on a market basis.
So you have witnessed during several last days that headlines in Croatian newspapers are filled with guesses, 10, 20, 40, 100% hike in natural gas prices. What is the real market price for natural gas in these times? Do you think it could be only introduced by the regulator?
Now that may take longer time, and it may take, of course, according to the priorities of the government and social priorities. But on the other hand, I think it's important that not all the households are the same. And if there are subsidies, again, you have to look at what is a fair system. To subsidize every household, or to subsidize those people who are in need, who cannot pay their bills on time, not just gas, but electricity or other things, or to subsidize with everyone, like us who probably don't need it, and maybe we have maybe larger flats than the average, and maybe we use more gas than the average. Should we be subsidized? Probably not.
And what do you think about some proposals to renegotiate the terms of the contract? Even the Prime Minister was talking about that.
As far as I'm aware, and we are really talking to a number of high-level politicians more or less every day, nobody ever raised with INA or with the other shareholder MOL the need or to wish to renegotiate any of the existing agreements, except for looking at what options exist regarding the natural gas solution because of the changed market conditions and maybe different priorities of the government. I'm always saying that, and I think not just big words, but it's a reality that if these two large shareholders cannot agree on the direction where we put our money, how we would like to transform INA, what major decisions we take, what the strategy of the company, then we cannot go forward. You cannot imagine that whatever is written in different contracts, if the two shareholders have totally opposite views, it's not possible to run a business. And so far, except for this question of how should we eliminate the subsidies from the natural gas trading and wholesale business, on all the other matters, short-term, long-term, there was always very good consensus and agreement between the shareholders, and that's what we intend to keep as well for the future.
Looking in long-term terms, do you strive to keep natural gas business inside INA, not to give it to government or some other company?
I think INA is, like it demonstrated in the last 15-20 years, it is qualified to run a gas business. It has experience from the production to storage to transportation to selling of the natural gas, so it's a qualified gas company. On the other hand, it is a shareholder matter because the two large shareholders of INA have agreed that in 2 steps the non-upstream related activities, so everything above the exploration production, would be transferred basically to the government of Croatia. Actually, the storage has been sold to Plinacro, and basically the second step would be realized according to the agreement by the end of this year. That would mean transferring the actual wholesale trading and import activity and wholesale activity to the government. That is the original agreement between the two parties. I believe the initial consideration was that then the government would have a full control over the value chain, so basically able to influence fully the pricing of the product, the import quantities, the import contracts, and so on. That is one philosophy. The other philosophy is a market philosophy, saying that the government acts merely as a regulator, making sure that the prices charged towards the different consumer groups are based on normal market principles, and that the bottlenecks of transportation system are basically eliminated so that the free market competition can exist between different gas traders. Now, in the last 2 years, a lot of changes occurred, basically meaning that there is now opportunity from next year to transport more competitive quantities into the natural gas market in Croatia, which was not existing 2 years ago. So reflecting these new circumstances, shareholders are negotiating about that, but no final conclusion is known at this stage. So INA acts right now as a diligent and good owner and operator of its gas business going forward.
So if the government wants to keep prices at the current level, maybe the shareholders would not be satisfied with keeping natural gas business inside INA?
Well, you know, the prices will always develop according, and the needs to look at prices will always develop in terms of how the market develops. So it is quite possible that over the next some years, the currencies and the prices, import prices, will develop in a way that the market competes down the price. Equally, it is possible, like if comes another upsurge, for example, in commodity prices, that the price goes up. And it's impossible for any one given business entity, especially for private shareholders, to sustain that for a long period of time. Therefore, it is also mandatory that market principles are being applied. Otherwise, what would happen is that business entity would either go out of business or would not be able to invest in other activities. Like in that case, we would have to stop if it was us. To stop in investments in refining system or filling station networks, or generally would have to touch upon our business in a way which would not be in the interest of our shareholders. So therefore, I think our general statement, and I think is probably everyone else would look at it in the same way, that we would only like to be in operations where the market principles and market pricing is somehow reflected and kept.
Do we need another underground storage in Grubišno Polje?
I mean, there is a large underground storage facility in Okoli, which used to be property of INA, later on was sold as per the agreement between the two shareholders to Plinacro. And as we are understanding that in order to operate that in peak storage for a certain period of time, there would be an opportunity to put smaller storage to basically work in tandem with Okoli storage. That would be Grubišno Polje, currently a field development concession by INA, where we are looking together with Plinacro to develop this in the future, exploiting the hydrocarbons from the field and transforming into underground storage. Hopefully this joint cooperation with Plinacro can be finalized relatively quickly, and it can be put to the usage of gas consumers in Croatia.
Regarding the situation in Europe, do we look at a safe distribution during the winter?
I think we started the year with relatively high storage capacities because the previous winter and due to the recession not all of the gas was used, so started with large surpluses. I believe now every company, including of course INA, is doing all its best efforts basically to secure enough capacities for the winter time, even calculating with harsh winter conditions. Let's say that's always is better to take the most conservative calculation for the future. And definitely we are really prepared for that. So I don't expect that winter supply would cause any problem for any Croatian consumers. Now, very important is that we have a direct supply obligation towards all households. So that is no question. We will have to fulfill, and we will fulfill.
But we should not disregard possible major disruptions in Europe.
I think what we saw in the last some periods that what was very important in such cases when there was temporary stoppage for a couple of days, in some cases nearly for a week, due to dispute between gas supplier and the gas transit country. Basically what mattered at that time, if you had enough storage and if you had infrastructure connections. So in this regard, the ability of Croatia to connect to the Hungarian market through the new interconnector gas pipeline, and through also to reach potentially Hungarian gas storage facilities, which are now nearly 6 billion cubic meters. So, I mean, far larger than the Croatian total market size, will give additional element of security. But it's not enough, this. I think the country needs to look at potential new projects. I believe the best option for the future would be to look at still, although it was going on for a long time, like LNG possibilities, because that would directly link the country and its infrastructure to seaborne trading, very flexible. Of course, price is always changing, but I think if you need the gas, you were able to ship it. And potentially also to other large schemes like the Nabucco, like the South Stream, if they develop, but they are much longer and much more, let's say, also politically motivated, driven, and dependent projects. LNG is a commercial project, not much depending on regional politics or big geopolitics regarding natural gas.
MOL is now quite big in this region between the Baltics and the Adriatics, but in European terms and global terms it's quite small. Is it possible to, is there space for such smaller national companies in a globalized world?
You very well saw that MOL was in the focus of attention in the last some years, partially because some hostile takeover attacks first by OMV, then a purchase of a large package of shares by Russian shareholders. And so far, I think, not purely based on government tactics or defense, MOL was able to defend itself on a market basis.
Is that a long-term strategy?
Yes. I can give you an example from Serbian oil industry, where clearly speaking, most of the decisions were not taken today in Belgrade. Now, is that good or bad? You can debate, but our philosophy is that whoever knows the region best, and in that case, in MOL's or INA's case, we are talking about decisions in Budapest or in Zagreb, decisions regarding where the best of the knowledge is available are made here, and not in Houston, not in London, not in Moscow or other places.
Do you expect another wave of consolidations in this region, or do you expect some bigger players, global players, to enter the region?
Well, it seems to be that the whole region is basically dominated or divided between two types of groupings, the so-called regional groupings, and mainly Eastern, I would call also Russian oil companies which invested very heavily in the region. It seems like Western multinationals, which anyway were just present in the retail segment, but not in refining business or production, they will further refocus their activities on international upstream or in Asian markets where, let's say, the large potential exists to grow for them. Because they are sizable players, they can't play in small. But in between regional groups and Russian groups, or maybe even Kazakhs and others, the competition will intensify, I believe, in this region, and there will be further fight for market positions. Now, I would say that within that game, INA and also the whole MOL group is very well positioned because it's ahead of the competitors in terms of refinery investments, in the modernization of its filling station networks, and it always try to be ahead a couple of years in the game.
Mr. Aldott, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.